Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of Studio Time. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Andrew Masters. I'm a producer, audio engineer, and musician who's had the luxury of working with artists such as Weezer, Sum 41, John Legend, Dawes, and many, many more. Now today I've got an artist coming in who's going to be recording a cover of Gavin DeGraw's hit single, I Don't Wanna Be.
It's knowing where I'm coming from. I don't wanna be anything other than what I've been trying to be lately. All I have to do is think of me and I have peace of mind.
Today we have the good fortune of trying a famous channel strip that you may have heard of before called the Moog Pre-Q2. Let's take a look at the channel strip itself. This unit was sent to us by Moog. It has two channels of their microphone preamp as well as EQs, including the famous Airband. In case you're not familiar, the Airband is the high shelf shape that includes 6 different frequencies that you can choose from, going all the way up to 40K. Also on the EQ is a low bell-shaped boost and cut with another 6 selectable frequencies, as well as a high-pass filter. Now the mic preamp design is pretty interesting. You've got a plus 25 dB button on the mic preamp, as well as the variable gain trim, and then you also have a 20 dB pad. What's cool about this unit itself is it's got a lot of functionality. On the rear of the unit, you have both your microphone inputs as well as XLR line inputs, so you can have access to the EQ themselves. And then on the front of the unit, you have a 1/4 inch instrument input as well as a 1/4 inch instrument through, allowing you to go in direct and also have a through out of the unit. So the way I'm gonna do this session with this channel strip is I'm going to treat this channel strip as if it were my prized possession, and I wanna hear it on as many different parts of the session as possible. Now, since it's 2 channels, we're gonna be overdubbing the different elements in this production and using 1 or 2 channels of the strip for each part of the process. Then after we've recorded a bunch, we'll use it on the mixing side and actually insert these EQs on a few different parts of the mix, including the entire mix. Now, as we're going through recording and mixing through this, if you're curious about any of the equipment that we're using, check the description. Those links down in the description will take you to Sweetwater, who is sponsoring this video. You can get all the gear that we're using at sweetwater.com. They are affiliate links, so at no extra cost to you, you can find the gear you're looking for, learn about it, pick it up, and if you do use those links to buy some gear, I'll get a small commission which helps support this channel so I can make more videos like this, which are pretty involved, I must say, but they are a lot of fun to make. So check out those links. Thanks to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. Now let's actually record some stuff. All right, so Daniel, oh God, the audio is just this is gonna be a fun test. So my voice, you're gonna hear the sound of this room, and then when we record the acoustic, you're gonna hear the difference between just being in this room and sitting where he is with these panels. It's gonna be, hopefully they're working well and it sounds nice and controlled, because I'm sure this doesn't sound. We're gonna start off with acoustics. This is a Martin D18, and we're also gonna try Daniel's OM28, is that right?
Yep.
And then we'll just have you play the same part. What's the intro? Is it just a C chord?
Yeah, just well, the electrics are doing the ba-na-na-na, and then it's just playing a C chord.
So there's like a riff that starts the song off, and then the acoustics come in with the drums with just super simple doubled C chord. Okay.
My whole situation made from clay to stone, and now I'm telling everybody I don't wanna be anything other than what I've been trying to be.
All right, so far we've recorded bass direct, we've recorded 2 different electric guitars via our aux box here and the Fender Princeton. And then we have also recorded 2 acoustic guitars and vocals. I think there's also like tambourine. So I've tried to do a variety of parts of this production that I'm able to do with either 1 or 2 preamps. A note here, we did not use the EQ on the input side. However, on some of the different sources, we did use the high pass filter. And I want to point out one thing that I like about the high pass filter. I mean, it's a high pass filter. You're just rolling off some of the mud and bottom end, but it's a variable high pass filter. So it's not like fixed to any particular frequency. Something that's I noticed with myself at the very least is that when I reach for a high pass filter and it's fixed, I personally tend to fixate on what the number says, but when it's variable, I'm just listening. And it's probably better to just listen, and I know that I shouldn't do that, but for some reason when it's indented, I really fixate on which frequency it is, and then sometimes I'll overthink, like, oh, I can't roll that much out on the input. So I like the fact that it's variable, and we did use that across several different of these input sources that we recorded through the pre-Q2 preamp. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to record a bunch of different things through this preamp is if I can stack those things up and hear them all together, I think it does give you a good picture. Now, it's more helpful if you can compare it to something else, especially if it's something that you're familiar with. But in this case, I did not compare it, but I did really think that it sounded and worked well. So, I mean, it's a great preamp. It's a very expensive preamp, so I would hope that it's good, but it does stack up and sound really, really nice. And since the preamps are kind of a big part of this product, good to know that. So let's do the most important thing and put all of these things together and listen to it, not in isolation, but in the context of the song that it is. There's a little bit of a mix on it. I'll play just a little bit of it so we don't have to listen to the whole thing, but we can get a picture of what this thing sounds like in the context of an actual song. Let me know what you think as we listen. From the top.
All right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist son. I don't have to be anyone other than a birth of 2 souls in one. Part of where I'm going is knowing where I'm coming from. I don't wanna be anything other than what I've been trying to be lately. All I have to do is think of me and I have peace of mind. I'm tired of looking around rooms wondering what I gotta do or who I'm supposed to be.
Now, all the things we recorded that I mentioned, we did through the Moog preamps, but the things that I didn't do through them are all of the drums. Now, I just have 2 channels and I could have put them in and just maybe tried them on overheads or something, but instead of doing that, I figured it'd be more fun to actually go in to the line inputs on this thing and use it as a hardware insert and move it around the mix on some of the different things that we recorded and listen to this EQ. So let's go ahead and do that and let me know what you think while we're listening. So check it out. Here's our mix as is.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son.
Sounds pretty good. So I have a combination of plugins on the mix as well as some outboard gear. So let's start with putting this thing on the master fader or mix bus, right? So I've got this tape emulation, I've got a hardware insert hitting my SSL Bus Plus compressor, and I've got a limiter. So what I'm gonna do is add it right in between our compression and our limit. Let's go ahead and start with the famous airband. I'm very excited here. Let's pick a frequency. Let's start at 40 and then kind of work our way down.
I don't need to be anything other one other than a birth of two souls in one. Part of where I'm going is knowing where I'm coming from. I don't wanna be anything other than what I've been trying to be lately. All I have to do is think of me and I peace of mind.
Okay, so pretty subtle. Let's see how far we can push it before it's too much.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist son. I don't have to.
Okay, so right now we're at all the way up on the air band. 10 dB of 40K.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist son. I don't have to be anyone other than a birth of two souls in one. Part of where I'm going is knowing where I'm coming from. I don't wanna be anything other than what I've been trying to be lately. All I have to do is think of me and I peace of mind. I'm tired.
Okay, wow. So 7 doesn't feel like too much. I felt like 10 was too much. However, I feel also like it's not unfamiliar. Even though it's too much, it's not like painful. So that's certainly interesting that you can really, really push it. Very cool. Okay, let's move on down. 7 is kind of like, you could maybe rock 7. I'd have to hear it maybe like in the car and listen to it over a couple days with some references, but sounds pretty good. Let's listen to 7 one more time. So 40K, 7 dBs on the air band. We'll start out and then I'll pop it in.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist son. I don't have to be anyone.
All right, maybe I would pull back to 5.5 or 6. Okay, sorry. Moving on. Let's flip to 20K. Let's see what the difference between. I'm gonna leave it where it is and just switch from 40 to 20. See if we can hear that difference. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist son. I don't have to be anyone other than a birth of two souls in one. Part of where I'm going is knowing where I'm coming from. I don't wanna be anything other than what I've been trying to be lately. All I have to do is think of me and I peace of mind. I'm tired of looking around rooms wondering what I gotta do or who I'm supposed to be. I don't wanna be anything other than me.
5.5 on 20 sounds good too. I'm gonna leave it on 20 at 5.5, and I want to play with this low frequency now.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist son. I don't have to be anyone other than a birth of two souls in one. Part of where I'm going is knowing where I'm coming from.
So I'm at 100 hertz right now. Let's flip through these low frequencies and hear where they're sitting in the context of this mix.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist son. I don't have to be anyone other than a birth of two souls in one. Part of where I'm going.
All right, so just if you can't see, we've got 165 hertz, 125, 100, 65, 40, and then we have sub. Now, I'm not really hearing anything with the sub, so I'm gonna crank it. Beware your speakers.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist son. I don't have to be anyone other than a birth of two souls in one. Part of where I'm going is knowing where I'm coming from. I don't wanna be anything other than what I've been trying to be lately. All I have to do is think of me and I have peace of mind. I'm tired of you.
Well, let me know what you think. This is very interesting. So the sub is very pleasing. I don't know what the heck we're hearing down there, but I'm gonna flip back to 100. 100 was the most sort of pleasant to my ears. Obviously, when you're playing around with stuff like this, it's going to be whatever complements the mix or the source that's you're running through it. By the way, what I said earlier about the high pass filter being variable, everything in here, except for the gain, the mic pre-gain, is detinted. But it doesn't have the numbers on every single thing, which, you know, and there's a lot of options. It's not like 3 options. But these are mostly detinted, which of course is great for recall. And if I was going to leave this thing on my mix bus, this is exactly how I would set it. It sounds really, really nice. It's, again, very tasteful and complementary to the mix. Let's move it around. Let's put it on something else here. Let's move it off our mix. Let's put it on vocal. Yeah.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist son. I don't have to be anyone other than a birth of two souls in one. Part of where I'm going is knowing where I'm coming from. I don't wanna be anything other than what I've been trying to be lately. All I have to do is think.
That's really nice. I'm not even going to move around. Yeah, okay, fine, I will.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist son. I don't have to be anyone other than a birth of two souls in one. Part of where I'm going is knowing where I'm coming from. I don't wanna be anything other than what I've been trying to be lately. All I have to do is think of me and I have peace of mind. I'm tired of looking around rooms wondering what I gotta do or who I'm supposed to be. I don't wanna be anything.
All right, well, it's pretty clear that the Airband high shelf shape rules. It's just more better, you know? It's one of those things that you can just click on, and it's going to be pretty difficult to overdo it. Now, I imagine if you went down to 2.5K, let's see what that does. It wouldn't sound very good.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard, son. I don't need to be anything other than a special.
It's not harsh like I would imagine. 2.5K is pretty awful frequency for most things, but it's not that bad. Let's hear 5.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard, son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist, son. I don't have to be anyone other than a birth of two souls in one.
There we go.
Part of where I'm going is knowing where I'm coming from. I don't wanna be anything other than what I've been trying to be lately. All I have to do is think of me and I have peace of mind. I'm tired of looking around rooms, wondering what I gotta do or who I'm supposed to be. I don't wanna be anything other than me.
Sounds freaking great. And lastly, let's try it on acoustics.
I don't need to be anything other than a prison guard, son. I don't need to be anything other than a specialist, son.
Nice and crispy, perhaps maybe even too crispy. That's a 5 dB on the 40K option. Let's pull it back to like 10 and back up to like 4 dB.
I don't need to be anything.
And let's be honest about what's going on here. We're adding a high shelf, which in almost every circumstance to the human ear is just going to sound more pleasant. I will say it's a really nice curve. This Airband is the name, but it's just a shape, high shelf shape. Whatever the curve is very nice. It is very smooth, and you can push it. And you can push it a lot more than you could push a lot of other high shelf shape. So I can definitely see using this on a lot of stuff. And I imagine this would bring a lot of value to the mix bus as a EQ.